Cameron Deggin, welcome to the show. Today we have today we're going to talk about the recent tragedy that took place in Turkey, and we'll be we'll be touching upon some of the major aspects of it, how sort of like the earthquake did happen, and what were some of the emergency response that came, and what has it changed in our lives over the past 10 days, and what it is likely to change forever in Turkey. So it's I just want to say that we are deeply saddened because of the tragedy that tens of thousands of people have lost their lives. But as Property Turkey, we have acknowledged this tragedy since the very first day and living this as our own tragedy, and we have been on the ground with the victims and helping out, right?
We've been on the ground. We have done our best to encourage everybody within the company to donate as much as they can, and I have to say I'm more than happy to see that all of us in the company, they felt for the cause, and everybody have done their best. And more importantly, quite a few of our clients,
Right.
They donated significant amounts for the earthquake relief, toward the earthquake relief. Clients from all over the world, people who feel that Turkey is also home for them.
Right.
So that's a happy thing.
Obviously, I have a few facts that I'd like to read out before we venture into our projections of what is going to happen in the country. And these facts are facts that are related to the tragedy that just happened. So the first point, I took notes of 4 different pointers here before I leave the word to you. So the first pointer was what happened. In a very summary version, 2 major earthquakes took place on the 6th of February in the southeast of Turkey. These were 7.6 and 7.7 magnitude earthquakes. Both of them are quite big. It resulted in heavy destruction in major cities in the region. These are primarily Hatay, Kahramanmaraş, Adıyaman, and Malatya. These were the cities that I personally have visited, and I spent quite a good amount of time in these places. So I know how densely populated these areas were, and I could, although I myself have not been to that particular area, I could see the amount of destruction that was caused there. And in addition to these cities, places like Adana, Gaziantep, and smaller cities nearby did take a significant amount of damage. And as a result, we know that up to 40,000 people have been pronounced dead, both in Turkey and in Syria. Now, in order for us to understand why that has happened, this part of Turkey is located in the junction of the tectonic plates, such as the Anatolian, African, and the Arabian plates. These types of earthquakes are common in the region. According to the historical data, these earthquakes have a tendency to recur in every 300 or so years.
So at the end of the day, as we always say, Turkey is a merger, or rather a crossroads from east to west, and it's really at such a geographic location that several plates, they interact with one another. You've got the African and Middle Eastern plate that is almost pushing Turkey northwards,
right?
And then to the up, you've got the European continent that applies another type of pressure.
Right.
So the land of Turkey, Anatolia, being at the crossroads of Europe, Africa, and Middle East, all these plates, which are kind of different parts of the world crust, so to speak, they all interact with one another. So Turkey is naturally on an earthquake zone.
I guess what we need to talk about now is the reasons behind the level of destruction,
devastation,
and the level of loss of life. And that's a very important point. I have summarized it into 4 different points. Number 1 was definitely the magnitude and the time of the earthquakes, because the first one, which is a bigger one, happened at 4 a.m. in the morning, which caught people sleeping. So that was the reason why a lot of people, well, the death toll was actually so much higher.
Simply, it's people were sitting ducks.
Yes.
Simply,
Right.
they couldn't escape.
Yeah.
So this particular earthquake hit the region at the worst possible time.
The second one, which was almost as big, the 7.6 magnitude earthquake, happened during daytime, and it didn't cause as much of a loss of life because people were out and about, and they already evacuated their buildings. The second one caused material damage. That was more significant than the first one. But another reason why, again, the destruction, devastation, and the death toll was this high was because of the terrain. When you look at the areas that were destroyed, we see a great majority of these buildings that were destroyed, they were built on the flatlands. For example, a city that we both know is called Hatay, that took, I think, the biggest share out of that destruction. Was that when you look at how the city was built, a portion of it is built on a rocky terrain. The other portion of the city was built on flat terrains, almost like there are rivers passing by. I think it's called
deltas.
The deltas.
They're probably deltas, old dried up deltas, which is where the soil or the ground is not necessarily as strong and as stable. I think that's what you're referring to as flat ground.
Right.
From what I understand, this is one of the biggest and most powerful earthquakes to hit anywhere on the land in the last 100 years.
Yes, I heard that too.
In terms of its impact, in terms of how impactful the earthquakes were.
And that power was felt by these cities so devastatingly because it happened very close to the Earth's crust. It didn't happen that deep. It happened close to the surface, which caused further devastation. Another reason was definitely the poor building quality, and the 98%, this is very important, 98% of the buildings that were destroyed were built before 1999. And 1999, as you know, if you want to say a few words on that, is a very important milestone for Turkey, right?
98% of these buildings were older buildings that were built before the new earthquake regulations came into force in 2001-2, after the major earthquake that hit the northwest of Turkey in 1999.
Right.
That was kind of a bit of a wake-up call for Turkey. It would appear that the wake-up call may not have been felt enough.
Right.
Despite the magnitude of the 99 earthquake. And this is what makes me sad.
Yeah.
98% of the buildings that collapsed, causing majority of the loss of life, were older buildings.
Yes.
That were not earthquake compliant.
Right.
And it appears that there are a few buildings that were built with so-called earthquake compliant regulations, which also collapsed in a way they should not have collapsed. But what gives me some relief is that those ones, they are the sheer minority.
The new builds, yeah.
The new builds that are built after the earthquake regulations, great majority of them appear to have stood the test.
What I observed is that these things were terrain related, rather than a great majority of the new builds.
The build quality.
So another reason why the death toll was this high because of the emergency response, because most of the roads, railways, ports, and airports that led to these cities were destroyed, which delayed the emergency response. Plus, you're talking about the weather. It snowed and rained in many of these cities. I don't know if it's right to say this particular use this particular or not. It was the perfect storm scenario.
It is a perfect storm scenario.
Two earthquakes, not one, two earthquakes in the same region. What are the chances of that happening? What is the chance of that happening 4 a.m. in the morning when everybody else is sleeping? What is the chance of roads and airports and ports are being destroyed, so the emergency response is delayed? And what is the chance of that happening in the dead of winter?
Midwinter.
Right.
Midwinter.
And there isn't much to say on that, but let's talk about some of the facts of what is expecting Turkey, right? Rebuilding. That's something that the Turkish government has called as an immediate rebuilding campaign in the destroyed areas. The earthquake has also raised attention to the older buildings in major cities. President Erdogan himself came along and say, in a very short time, he used the phrase of within a year that we will regenerate these cities. Obviously, now it is being talked about and debated whether or not they should regenerate these cities this fast. I mean, not regenerate, but rebuild these cities this fast, or allow some time for a proper urban planning, that would fit within the history of these cities and the significance and what they represent. Let me give you the big picture with the data.
Very briefly, give us the big picture.
Talk about it.
So the importance of regeneration is highlighted again and again, because for the next 20 years, in my opinion, this is the buzzword for Turkey.
Right,
has
100%.
To be.
So two things. Thing number one, from the economy point of view, IMF predictions for the Turkish GDP for 2023 was $950 billion. These four major cities that the destruction took place accounted for 5% of the country's GDP. It is expected that the GDP growth of Turkey will be a little lower than expected. And not only that, so that's you lost 30 to 40,000 people.
That's the direct impact.
Yes.
But then there's the impact of patching the wounds.
Right. And that is estimated to be between 20 to 30 billion dollars.
I think that's a very conservative estimate.
Right.
I was reading figures that actually put the estimates up to $100 billion.
Yes, and that's for regeneration. Now, let me give you some information about the urban regeneration that is required. Turkey has more than 40 million buildings all around the country. According to the Ministry of Environment, City and Climate, the total number of buildings that needs regeneration around the country is 3.2 million buildings.
When we say buildings, we don't want single dwellings.
No,
we mean
buildings.
A building that could, within it, have 50, 60 dwellings.
Right. You're talking about the 8 to 10% of the overall housing stock of Turkey. When you factor that into, when you proportionate that into the population, you're talking about 6 to 8 million people. 6 to 8 million Turkish people are living in these homes as of today that needs to be regenerated. And it has been said that 500,000 buildings within Istanbul needs regeneration.
500,000 buildings mean, in my opinion, no less than 3 million people.
Yeah,
no less.
At least.
So we're talking about in Istanbul alone, no less than 3 million people who currently live in properties that are not compliant
at all.
That are not earthquake compliant. They need to be replaced. They need to be regenerated as a matter of urgency.
100%.
This is the most urgent thing that has to happen in Turkey.
Yes.
Particularly along the earthquake fault lines. And guess what? Istanbul is on one of them.
Okay. Now, look, you've been in this industry for the past 20 years. And urban regeneration is definitely our thing. We know the dynamics. We know how it works. When you look at the next 10 years or so, how do you think this entire thing will play out?
There are a lot of things and a lot of factors that we can talk about.
Right.
One, there's going to be a major shift now from older stock to newer stock. You're going to start seeing people dumping old stock as if they're hot.
Yes.
What that means is that we're going to have an urgent, massive need to recreate, regenerate, street by street, district by district. Okay? Now, that needs a lot of funding.
A lot of funding.
A lot of funding. That needs the private sector, developers, project managers, the private sector, working in tandem, in full harmony with the government.
Right.
Another thing, funding. How do we fund this whole thing? Yes, we can go to the IMF. Yes, we can go to the World Bank. Yes, we can go to the European Bank of Recreation and Development. Probably we're going to do a bit of each. But I don't think that's enough in itself. I really don't think that's enough. So we're going to be needing to make sure that we have enough amount of foreign direct investment from private sector, private initiatives and investors coming into the country. Why would a foreign investor come into this? Or a Turkish investor for that matter? Why would they come in and bankroll the regenerations? Well, the only way or the only reason they would do it, people being people, is if there is good enough return in it for them. Which means, again, goes back to putting the regulations and legislation in such a way that for the private sector coming into urban regeneration, providing the quality stock, well, they don't just replace what's there.
But they also make money.
They also make money out of that. Now, how do they make money out of that? Well, simple. By replacing 10 units with 13 units. So they got the 30% extra, which is a margin.
Right.
By replacing 10 units with a market value of 10 liras each and raising that market value to 13, 14, 15 liras each.
Yeah.
These are the things that have to happen. It isn't a luxury. It isn't, oh, should we? Or is it a choice? No, it has to happen. Unless these things happen, urban regeneration isn't going to be fast enough.
Yeah.
Unless urban regeneration is fast and speed and efficient enough, we're not going to be able to put people in quality, earthquake-compliant housing. If we don't do that, we're up for another disaster.
Yes.
We need to give the private sector enough incentives to come in and regenerate. We need to provide speedy finance in a way that is palatable. And we need to manage the demand, which is going to be extremely steep. We need to manage the demand so that the right people get the right part of it.
Yeah.
So then, how do we do it? Because let's face it, Turkey is not necessarily a very, very rich country.
Right.
Now, what you're saying, Cameron, you could say to me, is that prices have to go up for profitability because we are giving better quality. So, of course, quality comes at a price. So then how is that average guy in the street going to afford that?
How do you think?
Now, this is where, as I said, the government and the private sector, they've got to work together. Banks in Turkey are wealthy.
Yes.
Turkish banks are wealthy, always been. They've got good bottom lines. They generate good profits. So these banks, they have to give more affordable loans, mortgages, to home buyers.
To the public, yeah.
Okay. Why don't they? Well, our mortgage system is not as developed as in the UK and in the US.
Right.
There are reasons. I'm not going to go into that, but I'll give you one little statistic that I looked up immediately when you told me we're going to do this episode. Because I know that this is something that the government has to adjust. Has to, no other way. Now, in the UK, 50% of all housing is mortgage-backed.
Right.
This means 50% of all housing stock in the UK is acquired by the end users, by the owners, with mortgages. So the overall loan to value in the UK, let's put it this way, is 50%. The same figure is around 45% in the US. Do you know what the same figure, what the equivalent figure in Turkey is?
15%?
15%.
Right.
Which means only 15% of housing is acquired via mortgages. Great majority of the housing stock in Turkey is purchased outright, is outright owned, no mortgages. Now, in a country that is not otherwise wealthy, where the average income per head is around $10,000, you can then very rightly ask me a question, Cameron, you're dreaming. How are these people going to afford these higher quality, yet higher price tag properties? Well, they won't be able to unless and until they have access to a proper mortgage system that gives them 20, 25 years, palatable interest rates, and loan to value around 80%, 70%, maybe up to 90% in some cases.
Yes.
Okay, now, proper mortgage system is needed. Whenever that happens, whenever mortgages are easier, whenever mortgages are easier to obtain with higher loan to value, it helps the housing market.
Yes.
Which means then people will be able to afford better homes. People will be able to replace their inferior, poor quality stock with better quality, better lifestyle offers, which is what has to be done as a matter of urgency, particularly in big cities such as Istanbul.
Let me give you the good news, Cameron. I agree 100% with all the points that you put forward. And you kept on saying the government has to, the government should. I don't think there is no should or has to anymore, because what is a government? Government is the public. Whatever the public needs. I mean, the ministers, the people who are running the country, it's the public itself. Right now and today and for the next 10 years, the biggest demand in the country, people will not want to fear death when they put their heads on their pillows. Don't you think that is going to affect the way they vote? Don't you think they will now vote for, oh, I have this type of a political ideology or that? I don't care. I don't care what type of an ideology do you have. Can you help solve my problem? Can I sleep without thinking about these things at night? So, therefore, urban regeneration will be at the forefront of all the political campaigns that will happen
100%.
in the next election and 100%. The election after it and the election after
100%.
it. Therefore, the government has no other choice but to put urban regeneration at the forefront of their political campaigns, their entire legislation and everything.
Do you know, Alaattin?
Right.
You know, we've been discussing, you and I, so many times. Let us just move that focus away from this sector. It's had enough for the past almost 20 years. You know, let's just move the focus away to more research and development, to technology,
right,
to robotics, to artificial intelligence, the electric cars. Yeah. Do you know what now?
Coming back.
Full blown.
Yes.
For the next 20 years, again, this is going to be the thing, the sector in Turkey.
Here's the thing. I mean, I live in this country, right? And I hear what people say. I listen to the young people. Oh, you know, too much construction industry. You know, you cannot save the country with buildings and shopping malls and this, that, and everything. And as they were saying this, I was always looking out the window and looking at this old stock. And I was thinking to myself, I was like, we need 10 times more growth in the construction industry so that we can properly regenerate our cities, so that we can end up being a bigger and better and stronger country.
100%.
And I could have never thought for a single day that the construction industry would slow down. It did slow down a little bit in the past few years.
Yeah.
It's not like in what happened in 2010, 12, 11. Yeah. It did slow down. But now I think the biggest construction boom ever in the world is coming to Turkey. Now,
Istanbul, if we had a time machine and we could travel 3 years forward, every corner of Istanbul will be a construction site.
Right.
I'm thinking majority of the stock will be pre-sold.
Yeah.
So it's not going to be a case of people building and then waiting to sell. No, people will pre-sell and build.
Yes.
Because the demand is going to be so high that the moment a regeneration project opens, people will be eyeing up what to buy to get in immediately.
Right.
Because I see a massive escalation of prices again. Now, I don't know. I can't say this is a good thing or a bad thing, but this is the way major cities in the world are. And I think Istanbul is going to catch up.
Look, there is an unavoidable price to pay here.
Yes.
Okay, and I'm not just talking about the demography of the neighborhoods has to change. It will change, and there's nothing you can do about it. When you look at central Istanbul, let's talk about Şişli, right? When you look at the 90% of the stock in Şişli that needs regenerating, you're not talking about the same people that will be living in these places when they are regenerated. So that will happen, and it's a sad thing.
The regeneration, Alaattin, will inevitably come with a rearrangement of the demographic makeup of the city also.
And there's nothing you can do about it.
There isn't, because you're not gonna be able to see. I don't think this is going to happen in a year or two, but I think in 10 years' time, in the city center of Istanbul, you're going to have people on deep pockets.
Right.
Only the deep-pocketed will be able to afford.
Before COVID, this is 2019, 2018, Istanbul per square meter averages was around $850 to $900 per square meter. Very cheap, very affordable. Today, 2022, coming into 2023, first quarter of 2023, $1,800 to $2,000 is the average per square meter in Istanbul. New or old?
Yeah.
$2,000. That, we were saying a couple months ago that, guys, Istanbul had a good run. This increase this trend isn't going to continue with the same speed. We do expect the prices to go up, but not with the same speed. Do not expect doubling your money in Istanbul. Don't come with, having 100% gains, whatever. It did happen. It's not going to happen again. Now, with this new push, we will see new all-time highs. The price per square meter in Istanbul going up to, I don't know, 3, 4, 5,000 US dollars.
Easily.
Because when you compare it to London, New York, and some other major cities around the world, which doesn't have this major of a push, the price per square meter is how much? $8,000, $10,000, $12,000 on average.
Well,
Istanbul's still below $2,000.
You see, in Turkey, the push is not just going to come from the demand side,
right?
But there's another push from the bottom up. Costs.
Right.
Here are the property prices in, say, massive cities, major cities such as Istanbul today. There is a pressure from up, cost pressure up, pushing up the price, and there's a demand pressure pulling up the price.
Right.
So the demand is going to be pulling the price up. The cost is going to be pushing the price up.
Right.
So I'm really, really hoping that the government and the Bank of Turkey, the Central Bank of Turkey, are quick enough and intelligent enough in completely revising the financial face of the lending market in Turkey.
This is currently what is being talked about, Cameron. There is no other thing. This is what the banks are talking about. This is what the financial institutions are talking about. This is what the government's construction arm, Emlak Konut Toki, and others are talking about. This is what the government is talking about. This is what the public is talking about. There is nothing else in Turkey right now that is being talked about. It was actually timely that the new financial center in Istanbul is being opening right now, and I think that will provide the infrastructure, at least for these financial institutions, to come and actually create new financial solutions for the growing finance needs of the country. So I'm quite hopeful to see what is going to happen and how, the scale of the regeneration that will take place. It's very hard to predict how exactly it is going to play out, but based on our experience, as you just explained, these are the certain things that we're thinking. The costs, the construction costs are going to go up. There's definitely demand for this that will pull up the prices.
The demand for new quality buildings.
There is no other property.
Is going to skyrocket.
There is no other property. That is
the demand for that segment is going to skyrocket.
Right, and we know that the financial institutions are now working on
regulating and making it easy for people to borrow money against their homes.
Right.
Priority number one. All these.
Anyway, so I think it's enough that we talked about these certain things. It's good actually, because it has brought some normality and normalcy into our daily lives, because let's face it, this is our job and this is what we do. One can be one can move away from these types of tragedy by focusing on their work and focusing on what they do best. And thank you very much for these insights. And I know you've been studying these things for the past, the moment that this tragedy happened, you've been looking into these things to sort of understand how this entire thing is going to play out, because the business side is one thing. The other side is human lives, and that's a very important thing. So you
can't price it. You can't put a price on that.
Right.
And this is why all these things are extremely important now.
Right.
To actually give people a peace of mind, to give them the comfort at their home.
Right.
And to make sure that the country does not suffer from such unnecessary losses.
It's not just business for us. This is why I want my audience to understand. It's not just business for us. It's saving lives. It's thinking about the country and how our country is going to be. I mean, yesterday we were knocking down the buildings of Sense Levant. Yesterday we had our demolition. Cameron, the buildings did not have columns.
I know.
It didn't have iron, nothing. And as it was happening, I when I was watching it, I was hopeful to see, okay, you know what? It's good that these people were not caught in these buildings when the earthquake hit. I mean, it's a very fine line. It's a very thin line to walk. It's our job, business, but there's also the societal aspect of these things. So, yeah. Thank you very much for watching, guys. We wanted to give you guys an update on what is happening in the industry, what is happening in our lives, and what do we expect to happen in the country. By the way, we have put there's a banner that's been coming up for the donations of the victims of the earthquakes. It would be amazing if you guys could contribute and chip in, because it matters to us. Me, Cameron, Property Turkey, our clients, and some of our audience who is watching right now has been chipping in since the very first day. We are ever so thankful for you. You have not only provided us business, but also help for the country, because most of you, when we speak on the phone, you guys were saying, you know what, Alaattin, I had a good run. I took on your investment and I made money in Turkey. Now I see this as my debt.
They want to return something.
And this,
really and truly, I mean, we were all very, very touched, because in the days following the earthquake, quite a few clients, quite a few people reached out to us. These are people who've been our clients for many years. They reached out to us. They said, okay, do you have a link you can send where we can donate? How can we take part? How can we help? And I know a lot of them did.
A lot. I don't want to give any figures, but a significant amount of help came in.
Very nice to see.
Right.
Very, very nice to see that people actually are stepping up and they want to do something.
Okay. Cameron, Deggin, thank you very much. Thank you very much, guys, for watching. These will be the topics that we will be discussing in the upcoming episodes. We'll discuss about the situation here in Istanbul as well, the urban regeneration, the expected earthquake, and we'll talk about. We'll be updating you with how things play out in the industry and in the country. Thank you very much for watching, and see you in the next one.
Thanks a lot.